So I feel like this would be a good time to tell people that we got some changes going on.
Yeah, we do.
So we had lost Candace Johnson, our research producer, because life happened, and we know. I think at the time she wasn't working, so she had a little more time to dedicate to it. So she's got a job. Congrats to Candace. And
Yay.
I know there's some stuff going on as well in her life. So she's just taking a break, and whether she'll be back, possibly down the road, totally open to it. But we did start to recruit a new team that we'll be introducing you guys to very soon.
Yes, very exciting. A lot of new people.
And a variety of people, too. Like, one's a paralegal. Well, I mean, we got some good resources at our disposal and some people that are really willing to help, and we'll see where we can take this thing.
Well, and I already have a list of questions for the paralegal, including a special verdict like last week, because I still don't understand what that means.
I agree. I kind of know what it means, but I think I could use a little more insight. So
explain this to me like I'm 5.
See if she can help us out.
33, 1, 0. Main event of the evening. Wednesday and half past the hour.
It's Tuesday, and you're listening to Murder Unscripted.
What is up, crime crew? Welcome back to Murder Unscripted, the most immersive true crime podcast on the internet today. And I'm going to say immersive, not the best necessarily, but the most immersive. Like, name somebody else that's taking people to crime scenes, working in the true crime. I mean, come on.
I guess.
Well, I think we're pretty damn cool, so we'll call it the best too. And I'm your host, longtime true crime producer Ed Hydock, along with my co-host, a woman who is much more pleasant when we record at 6 p.m. rather than 8 a.m. on a Sunday, Melissa Spivey.
Am I ever really that pleasant, though? Like, if you really think about it?
Probably no, but you're more pleasant.
Regardless the time of day.
Well, sorry for dragging you out of bed.
Oh.
Well, we have reached episode 64, and today we're continuing our trip down a rabbit hole into some cases where a crime happens in a small, tight-knit community, and while everyone may have their theories on who was responsible, the locals are keeping their secrets close to their vests, which can often hinder an investigation. And this is a block we're calling Small Town Secrets. And I was thinking about this the other day. So I come from a very small town. I believe population is 4,000. And knowing those people, I would like to believe that if they had information on a gruesome murder, that they would line up to tell police what they know. But on the flip side, I've been to some incredibly rural areas of this country where folks just keep to themselves. Like, some of them don't trust cops to start with. Mm-hmm. Some of them simply don't want to get involved in things that don't concern them. And the other thing is maybe they know too much and are terrified of being targeted by the actual suspect.
All right, I know where you grew up, and there are some scary rural sections. So
yeah, you go up in the hills a little bit.
There's people with signs that say, like, I shoot faster than I ask questions, or whatever how that hillbilly shit
A lot
says.
of trucks. Well, before we dive in, I would just like to remind everyone that if you like what you're hearing from us, click that like button, click that subscribe button, or to our listening audience, please drop a review on Apple or Spotify. So these positive reviews, when a podcast gets them, it really helps them kind of climb the charts and ultimately reach more listeners, which, I mean, that's what we're about. And if you don't care about spreading awareness, maybe you care about stickers, which we have in boatloads. So if you take the time to leave us a review, we will absolutely send you a sticker. Just screenshot it, DM us, however you'd like to do it. And that's our little thank you to you. I think it's a pretty fair trade-off.
Totally fair.
Yeah.
All right. Well, getting into today's case. So we know that the nature of what we cover and talk about on this pod is always pretty heavy. And today's case is no different. But I feel like it's been a hot minute since we've jumped into the time machine.
Oh, man.
So I decided to get a little beep boop action going to kick things off. That'll really wake you up.
Yeah, nothing gets me going like Melissa's sound. You're the real Michael Winslow of the true crime world.
Thank you. I think so too. Well, we are going back to July of 1989. On the radio, we had If You Don't Know Me By Now by Simply Red, Express Yourself by Madonna, and a little Milli Vanilli lip singing, Baby Don't Forget My Number.
Rob and Fab.
Oh, so good. Oh, and Bat Dance by the artist formerly known as Prince. I don't know what we call him now.
He's just
but that
a
was
symbol.
on the Batman soundtrack.
You just kind of, he's this guy.
Oh, that one. That
Yeah.
guy. Well, if you were more of a movie buff, July 1989 was where the movies were at. Batman, the best one with Michael Keaton and Jack Nicholson.
Yes.
That was
Hell of
so
a movie.
good. Lethal Weapon 2, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. They were all dropping in theaters, along with Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, When Harry Met Sally, and Ghostbusters 2.
So I don't know if it's just because it's nostalgic or what, but when's the last time you saw an era with so many great movies? I feel like the 80s and 90s were just, things were original, they were funny. Those were the days when like a PG rating meant absolutely nothing. Like if a movie was PG, my parents would just throw me in a room with a VCR and like go nuts. Like we watched Beetlejuice last night and I forgot, there were some terrifying parts of that movie.
Yeah.
And also I'm like sitting there watching it with the kids and Michael Keaton, I forgot, grabs his junk and drops a giant F-bomb. And I'm like, this was PG? I feel like 80s kids, that's what made us who we are. Like we're hardened because of those movies.
To be fair, I would still like to grab Michael Keaton's junk, but anyway. No, I agree. Overall, it was a pretty solid time to be a teenager, and that is exactly who's at the heart of today's case. The disappearance and ultimately the death of 18-year-old Shannon Siders is who we're going to cover today.
Okay.
So, according to the 1990 census, Newaygo, Michigan, which is where we're at today, had a population of 1,787 people, and it's
Wow.
about 45 minutes to an hour northeast of Grand Rapids.
Okay.
And Newaygo is located on the border of the Newaygo State Park, and from everything I've read and seen, it's like a very country, outdoorsy way of life.
Okay.
Lots of fishing and hunting. Nothing I get involved in, but lots of people like that stuff.
I was going to say, the only fish you've ever caught is a Swedish one.
Stop it.
I've never met someone who hates the outdoors more than you.
Oh, it's hot and there's people and I just hate it.
And bugs.
And bugs, or it's too cold.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, Shannon was born on March 31st, 1971, and is very much the beloved daughter of Robert, aka Bob Siders. Shannon's parents divorced when she was really young. I think she was about 6 or so, and her dad actually got full custody, which in the mid to late 70s really wasn't super heard of, the dad getting custody.
Right.
I think her mom was going through some stuff in the Cold Case Files episode, which is one of our sources for today. Bob talks and he's like, yeah, she didn't really want to be married anymore. So
That sucks.
it is what it is.
Yeah.
But this left Bob being, a single dad. And Bob really did a great job. He loved Shannon. He provided her a very normal childhood. And he actually, at the time of our story, he had gotten a pretty good job at the bottling plant for Pepsi Cola. So once Shannon was an older teenager, he started working the graveyard shift. So midnight to 8:30 a.m. And this worked out really well for him because then he was able to be home for anything that Shannon needed during the day, help her with homework, go to her after school activities. They could eat dinner together. And then as she's winding down and getting ready for bed, he'd be heading out the door around 10:30 p.m., which is exactly what he did on July 17th, 1989.
Okay, so one, he's an awesome dad because he's doing what he has to do, and it sounds like it's a tough situation for him, so I applaud him for that. But two, I know she's technically 18, but something about leaving a child overnight, I'm not saying he's a bad dad for doing it, I'm just saying it's scary. And at least to me, because maybe that's because all we do is talk about these awful stories and we just know the horrors that exist in this world.
Well, I also think, and we say this all the time, but it was a different time. I feel in the 80s, your parents are like, here's money for pizza, see you in a week.
Good luck, yeah.
So, when Bob got home the next morning, he went to look for Shannon just to touch base with her, say good morning, but she wasn't in her room and he couldn't find her anywhere in the house.
Ooh, cue the crow. And it's the first ominous moment at the point in the story where you know something's not going to end well.
Oh, I know, it always happens. Well, Bob didn't really panic immediately because she is 18. She's legally an adult and he kind of thought, well, maybe she ended up sleeping over at a friend's or she went out for a walk and just didn't leave a note or something.
Mm-hmm.
But what really kind of bugged him was she had recently gotten a puppy and she was obsessed with this puppy. And when Bob got home, the puppy had like made a couple messes on the floor. And Bob's like, that's really unlike Shannon. Even if she had gone out, she would have taken the puppy with her or figured something out.
How many stories have we done where that comes up? Patrick Dennehy comes to mind, where he just had a puppy and then someone went to do a welfare check and the puppies were uncared for. So this is like the third or fourth story I know of personally that has an element like this. Crazy.
That's how you know something would happen to me.
Oh, yes.
If my dogs weren't being waited on hand and paw,
100%.
Something happened.
Yes.
So Bob decided to make a few calls to some of Shannon's friends and like a few of the local parents and asking the neighbors just if they had seen her. And all those calls kept coming up with the same answer though, like, no, sorry, but if she pops up, we'll let you know, types of responses. So Bob starts walking around the neighborhood calling out for her, and when she hadn't shown up, he finally went to the police department and filed a missing persons report.
And just a reminder to our younger listeners, this was a time long before cell phones. I feel like it's hard for this next generation to even comprehend what that means because of how connected everything is today. And not blaming them, it's not their fault. You guys are all growing up in an incredible era of technology. But back then, if you wanted to know where your kids were, you either got a call on your house phone from a friend's mom saying you were there, or you had to go looking for a stack of bikes at the end of somebody's driveway.
Honestly, I'm kind of in that weird era where, I think I got my first cell phone at 11 or 12.
Wow.
So I don't even remember a whole lot of not having a cell phone.
It was crazy. And I think people looked out for each other's kids more too. Like if I was at somebody's house, that mom would call my mom and say, hey, Ed's here.
Come get your damn kid. Why is he here
come
again?
get him. He wants dinner and I'm not feeding him.
So in this case, I've heard conflicting stories about how the police kind of handled this right away, but pretty quickly they ended up taking it seriously. And some of the articles I read bring this up, but in an interview with Bob, it wasn't mentioned, so I just want to throw it out there. As we know, in most cases, a victim's partner or spouse is always the first one looked at.
Mm-hmm.
And Shannon had a kind of sort of boyfriend, but he had like moved or gone away to school.
Oh.
So they didn't really look too much at him. At first they thought, oh, maybe she had gone there to see him. But after a couple days when she hadn't shown up, like she would have been there. So they were kind of like, okay, cross that out. And if there was any suspicion placed on Bob at the beginning, he called them out and gave them a detailed interview, took a polygraph, and he was like, figure out everything we got to do to rule me out. Let's do it and move on. So Bob is 100% ruled out pretty quickly. He's cleared. And like, this man is a dad. Like, honestly, he is a dad any kid would be lucky to have.
Honestly, police can usually tell the difference almost immediately between a good dad who's genuinely concerned and really upset about what's happening to his daughter and someone who's hiding something. And I also assume they could very easily check, like call Bob's boss and check his time card. His boss will say whether he was here or not. And if he was, then pretty easy to rule out.
Well, for sure. And I think like the small town also knew that like he had been her only parent for how many years?
Right.
Like, why now would he kill? I kind of like, why now?
So just to play devil's advocate, and Bob sounds like a fantastic guy, but if he wasn't, there's always the possibility that he got tired of being a dad by himself.
Yeah, that's fair.
You know what I mean? So there's always things that you have to rule out, even if it may seem so off the wall. It's part of the investigation.
Well, I can attest, I watched a bunch of interviews with Bob, and he is so sweet. He breaks your heart. He's adorable. But at least with that out of the way, they could move on to actual suspects.
Right.
So the police get to work trying to figure out any kind of timeline from like 10:30 p.m. when Bob went to work on July 17th until like 8:39 a.m. on July 18th when Bob got home. So missing flyers are posted and sent out to all the local police departments, and these actually generated a lot of calls and tips, and the police were pretty hopeful they were going to find Shannon. And actually, right away, they kind of got a lead. One tip came in that there was a young woman named Shannon hiding out from her dad at this like known drug house in a nearby town.
Wow.
So the detectives are like, oh, we kind of figured she ran away. Like, this is probably her. And how many Shannons are missing and hiding from their dad? So they went to this, like, drug house super optimistically, thinking it was her, or at least be like, you need to call your dad.
Yeah.
It's a whole nother Shannon.
Really?
Like, it's some
That's insane.
random girl. Isn't that nuts?
Crazy coincidence.
Yeah, it's like just another random girl named Shannon who happened to be hiding from her dad. So that kind of threw everything off for a little bit.
Yeah, what are the odds?
I know, right? All right, so I've said this is one of those small towns, and this is possibly the most 1980s thing I've ever heard. So that summer, the police department employed a 15-year-old Amy Bonner to be their receptionist.
Oh my God.
I mean, in the big picture, like, it's really not that crazy, but it just sounds so funny. Like, you go to call the police department and, like, a 15-year-old answers. I don't know. I feel like that's so weird.
I can picture like a 15-year-old being a babysitter or even working maybe like a grocery store bagger or something like that. But I feel like it's a pretty important job.
Yeah.
It reminds me of when we interviewed Kurt Mail and he was like, oh yeah, I didn't even have to go through the academy. They gave me a gun and a badge and said,
Have
keep
a
our
good one.
streets safe.
Yeah, things have
Wow.
changed.
Wow, that's wild.
So one day, Amy's at work doing her job, and she answers the phone when the caller on the other end said to her, I just killed Shannon Siders. And the person was like really like excited and
What?
breathing heavy, almost like an adrenaline rush. And then the caller like hung up immediately.
That's so creepy. Like you figure
Isn't it?
this, if it's a small town like this, you're used to again, like my neighbor's dog's barking or someone's
Yeah.
playing, you know what I mean? Just really simple crimes that it would be an easy job for a 15-year-old to just route that to a detective. But like, this is major news. And I'm sure it really shook her.
It did. Like, it really rocked her, and she broke down in tears, and she immediately went to go get the detectives who she knew had been working on Shannon's case and told them what was said.
So it's weird though, because if she's only been missing for what, 12, if we can guess 12 hours, maybe 24, like, and a prank call is already coming in about her, it seems like super sketch. Usually that stuff happens when these cases linger and you have this person that's been missing for months and years, and then people think it's funny. But to have that happen so soon after someone is missing is very weird to me. Like, and it makes me wonder if it's the people involved who did it.
I don't know exactly when that call came in. I don't think it was immediately after. I think it was like a couple days later. And they did a bunch of work and they tracked down the caller. And of course, because people are dicks, it was a prank call. Because people.
Yeah, well.
But I think that really kind of flipped a switch in detectives' heads that, like, maybe this isn't a runaway or a missing person. Like, maybe this is a homicide.
Mm-hmm.
And this also had a major impact on Amy. From that day on, Shannon was like never out of Amy's mind. Amy plays a big part of this, so we'll come back to her later. Well, if that prank call hadn't totally convinced detectives that something bad had happened to Shannon, when Labor Day weekend rolled around, they were pretty damn sure. Because two guys were out doing manly outdoorsy things in the Manistee National Forest, and they came across 2 ID cards with Shannon's name on it.
Oh, wow. She's
And
in
a
the woods.
pair of jeans. Yeah. And I also heard that there had been a gas card nearby with Bob's name on it.
Oh, so maybe Bob gave her the gas card if she needed gas.
Right.
And she had it on her.
All right. You know that I am not very geographically gifted.
But you are in so many other ways.
I used the GPS to get to your house for like
It's easy
the
to
first year
overlook.
that we were friends. Well, I just want to try to give you an idea of like the general location here. So like I said, the Newaygo is like 40-ish miles northeast of Grand Rapids. To the west of Newaygo is the Manistee National Forest, and to the east is Newaygo State Park. So like a lot of government protected natural land, dirt trails through the woods. It's just like a very heavily dense forested area. So the fact that 2 random dudes stumbled across her items, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack kind of thing.
Well, yeah, and if I were a detective, the first thing I would do is focus on these 2 guys for that very reason.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, you found it. How did you find that out of all of the things you can find in this forest? Like, it's so vast. How did you come across this?
Right.
And to the locals, this particular area is referred to as the hole in the woods.
Oh, wow.
And turns out the Hole in the Woods was like a really popular place for local teens to hang out, play music, drink beers, just do all the teenage things. And Shannon's a teenager.
Sounds like a place to me that you would go and not tell your parents.
Yeah, and it sounds like this Hole in the Woods place was kind of a rite of passage too, because in the Cold Case Files episode Bob's on, and he talks about going there when he was a teen.
Oh, wow. So it's been...
seems, yeah. So when I said Bob is the kind of dad that any kid would be lucky to have, this is what I mean. So when he found out Shannon's items were found, I think Bob knew probably at that point they were now looking for a body. And he went to the Hole in the Woods area by himself, and he tried to talk to Shannon, and this is so heartbreaking. He tried to listen for her. He's in the woods saying out loud, he's like, "Kiddo, I'm here. Tell me where you are so I can find you and bring you home."
God, that is heartbreak. I can see it. And he's desperate.
He's desperate, exactly. And maybe for the best that Shannon did not guide him to her that day. But on October 15th, 1989, almost exactly 3 months since she was last seen alive, a deer hunter stumbled across a female body in a state of decomposition in fairly close proximity to where her ID cards and jeans had just been found.
That's tough. And he was just feet from his daughter's remains and didn't even know it.
Yeah, in the Cold Case Files, the one detective is like, yeah, she's right up in that tree line. So I'm assuming she was not far from where he was.
Wow, that's awful.
So Bob had been at home with his girlfriend Linda at the time when he received the call no parent ever wants to get. Around midnight, he's at the police station being told the body in the woods was, in fact, his daughter Shannon.
Man, do you know how they ID'd her? Was it dental records, clothing, looks? Because you said she was decomposed, so you know what I mean? Sometimes it's hard to tell who it is.
I honestly don't. No one ever really touched on that. It could have been dental records. It could have also been the clothing she was wearing kind of gave them an idea.
Okay.
Bob opted not to look at her, apparently, and honestly, I can't say that I blame him.
Not one bit.
No, and I almost feel like Shannon didn't let him be the one to find her because she knew he wouldn't be able to handle it, So, I feel like it's better for a stranger to find it. I don't know. I don't think anyone wants to find it, but I feel like maybe someone who hunts and can field dress a deer was maybe better equipped to handle the sight of her body. I don't know, but it feels very oddly connected, if that makes sense.
It does. I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, I do believe the world works in mysterious ways, but I also think he would have wanted to find Shannon if it meant finding her. You know what I mean? Just that little bit of closure.
Yeah, I don't know. I will say, and we can cut this out, but I was going to text it to you earlier. Cold Case Files recreations are traumatizing AF. The skeleton they used is sick.
What year? Do you know what season it was or what year? Because
I want to say season 7 or 8. I think it was season 8.
So it was an older one. So when we came back and redid it in 2021 or whatever it was, we restarted at season 1. It was like a reboot. So those older ones, and then they did a shorter reboot in 2017 that was tough to watch. They really went over the top. So maybe it was in that vein of stories.
I was watching it this morning and I was like, holy shit, that I wouldn't. Wow. Okay.
And that's not right. I am a firm believer. I love the recreations that we did in our reboot because they were symbolic recreations. So if a child was abducted from their room or murdered in their room, we would show a teddy bear on a rocking chair rather than
yes.
what's going. And I think that's more respectful. It's easier for the families to watch a program like that. And it gives it, I don't know, it lends it more credibility because it shows that you're not in it just for the salacious gore of everything, that you're trying to tell an impactful story.
Yeah, I was sitting there watching it, and I'm watching Bob on being interviewed, and I'm like, God, I hope he didn't watch this. I would not want. Obviously, I know it's a big skeleton, but still, it was.
Doesn't matter.
Hard to watch.
You have to live these things as a victim's family member, and you've heard stories, and chances are you saw the real things at the trial when all these exhibits came out. But sometimes the parents haven't. If there was a plea deal or something, you may not have to go. You may never have seen what happened to your loved one. So I feel like to see it being acted out hits really differently in a very disrespectful way. I get that it's important to help tell the story, but at the same time, I could not imagine having to watch my loved one being killed.
Yeah, I was kind of like, ugh, about the episode that I watched this morning.
Wow.
So I want to very quickly cover the medical examiner's findings, and then we can move on. But Shannon Siders' cause of death was ruled as blunt force trauma to the head. She had multiple injuries to her body, including what appeared to be cuts or mutilation to her perineum and genitals.
Oh,
She was
wow.
found with her shirt lifted, exposing her breasts, and with her underwear pulled down and around like one of her ankles. Her nose was completely smashed in. Like, it was really bad. She was brutalized.
That's tough. And immediately to me, it points obviously to a sexual element, and I can totally see it. Like, Shannon is asked to go out to the woods by a friend to like hang out in this super hidden spot, but that friend had bad intentions. So without knowing how this story ends, I'm going to guess it's someone she knew, especially since she would have needed to be lured from her house where her dad left her that night. And then there's another element to it. The cuts on her genitals are weird because that seems ritualistic to me. So at the same time, I could see where this is bigger, but that could also be them trying to throw police off. I don't know what happened out there, you know?
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, ultimately, we don't really know the dirty details of it all to this day. But, and you'll like this kind of following up on what you just said, but another reason Bob's such a good dad, when it was time for him to plan her funeral, you know, he didn't know what monster did this to her, but he had a gut feeling that Shannon knew her killer.
Right. I mean, it's the only logical thing that makes sense because these small towns, who you don't anticipate some monster coming into your town to do something like this. It had to be someone you pass on the street every day.
Right. So, well, when it was time for him to pick her pallbearers, he refused to let any men, like family or friends, take on that role. He did not want to risk giving the honor to her killer. So he ultimately decided to have Shannon's female cousins escort her casket during the services.
That's why police will stake out a funeral sometimes, because the perpetrator will be there, one, either because they get off on it, or two, because they're trying to deflect suspicion off themselves. So they're like, if I act like I'm just a concerned member of the community, no one will suspect me.
Exactly. So I thought that was a pretty wise decision he made. But when some of Shannon's friends asked Bob if they could write some letters to her, he did allow them to be placed in Shannon's casket to be buried with her.
That's tough. That poor guy had to have a million thoughts running through his head, and I can totally understand why he felt like he couldn't trust anyone. Like, small town, remember, we just talked about it. You never want to think that someone in your community would be capable of being so evil. Like, someone you either spend time with, someone who knows your family. So it sounds like he really was trying to be a good dad and allow her friends that also cared about her to offer to these letters to, like, at least say goodbye in their own way. But he's still so wary that these letters may not be what they look like.
Yeah, I think it's a good move, but I think it would be scary.
Yeah.
So after the funeral and once things settled down, so to speak, the detectives really knew they needed to go all in on this investigation. And just for transparency's sake, in everything I came across on this case, the police involved were really just referred to as like detectives or police, with no major indication of what department it was. And I think that was because, like I explained earlier, with all the different parks and state parks that were around, that there was probably a little bit of, not confusion, but maybe some overlapping in like what was state police jurisdiction versus what was local police and so on.
Sure.
So I think that this area of Michigan might be similar, considering you have a state and national park on either side of Newaygo. And I only want to bring this up because, unlike many small town cases where police departments aren't equipped to handle an investigation like this, or they don't want to work together, the officers in this case did not hesitate to like reach up for help.
And so the best example I can give is I worked a case in Missouri where the first thing that happened, the very first call that came in, was about this girl whose car was found abandoned on a highway. So the person who found this car obviously just called local police, because what else do you do? How do you know whose jurisdiction it is? You just pick up the phone and call the police. So the local police came out, they looked things over and immediately realized this is on a state highway. So now all of a sudden the stateies come out and do their investigation. But then in the case I'm talking about, this girl was found in a lake then the next county over. So now all of a sudden you have 3 different jurisdictions that kind of have to come together, working their own individual portions of the case. Basically, it forces them to all come together to solve this.
Yeah, that stuff is always so wild to me. Or like if you go missing in one town, the other town can't work on it because even though you don't live there. Like, it's wild. But
it is, yep.
Well, it kind of sounds like that. Well, that's what was happening here. So they do work together, and they decide to bring in an entomologist to examine the insects and larvae found on Shannon's body to solidify a time of death, like a date of death, time of death, etc. And it did match up to like mid to late July, which is when, the party was, or when the night she went out. And they also reached out for additional help of a profiler to try and narrow down who they were looking for in their suspect pool. And that profile consisted of: the killer was probably in her age or peer group. There was most likely more than one person involved. Alcohol and or drugs were involved. The crime was sexually motivated. And the killer most likely knew Shannon.
I'm glad they reached out for help, but that profile, I feel like, is something that anybody just looking at the case from a 10,000-foot view could do themselves.
Yeah, I agree. But, I mean, they needed to start somewhere because this murder had the whole town on edge. Like, nobody felt safe.
Yeah.
So the detectives decided to go back to the night of the murder and talk to everyone they could. They're able to narrow things down to a group of 8 teenagers that were with Shannon on July 17th. So here's what the detectives gathered after talking to those teenagers. These 8 teens were split up across 3 cars, and they did in fact end up at the hole in the woods, drinking some beers, smoking, driving around the various trails, whatnot. And originally, Shannon had been in the car with Levi Pearson and Brandon Sievers.
Did one of those teens say that? Because that's a humongous clue.
Yeah, like this is,
Okay.
they stated that in their interviews.
Wow. Okay, that's big.
Well, here's the thing though. So at the time, in 1989, Brandon Sievers was very well known to pretty much hate women and just had a bad reputation with everyone in the town. Like, he was known to give a lot of girls the creeps and very regularly referred to women as sluts, bitches, whores, etc.
Wow. Cool guy.
So, yeah, he's just kind of a shitbag in general to be around. He reminds me of our bad guy last week.
Oh,
the
yeah,
Bass
one of those
brother.
yeah.
So I don't know if Shannon had just had enough of being around this asshole or what, but she was like, at some point in the night, she started saying she was tired and she's ready to go home. And the group of teens kind of split up at this point, and I'm not sure what all of them ended up doing. Some went to stay, some went to drive around. But at least 2 brothers, Matt and Paul Jones, were happy to head out of the woods. So Shannon hitches a ride with them, and they start heading back to Shannon's house. It sounds like there was some talk on the way to her house about maybe going in and watching a movie and having a couple of beers. But by the time they got back to her house, Shannon had changed her mind and she's like, no, I'm just ready to call it a night. So Matt and Paul dropped Shannon off. They told the investigators it was between 1 and 2 a.m. They said the front porch light was on, as well as a TV they could see through the front windows of the house. And they also said they could see Shannon's dog was like jumping and running around and, was happy she came home. And that was the last time they or anyone else saw her.
I'm calling bullshit already because it's too convenient. You know what I mean? She's dead. Dad wasn't home. So essentially you can make up any plausible theory and it'll be tough for police to prove or disprove it.
Agreed. Well, at this point, we kind of have a couple suspects. Like, we have woman hater Brandon, and then we have the brothers, Matt and Paul, and they all kind of fit into the profiler's description of the likely killer. So the detectives decide to dig really deep into these guys. And there was a rumor that Brandon actually left town right after Shannon went missing. So they're like, oh my God, that's so suspicious. Like, we got to look into that. Well, it turns out that, yeah, he did leave town, but it was only for like 2 or 3 days to head to Colorado. And he was like helping his cousin come back home. And this had been pre-planned. He was there for a couple days. He came right back. It wasn't like he was fleeing.
Yeah, it's not like he moved.
Right. So they're kind of like, okay, we can, they didn't cross him off, but they kind of moved away from him a little bit. Mm-hmm. So the detectives drove the route home that Matt and Paul had told them that they had taken with Shannon. And the timing matched their stories. And when they pulled up to Shannon's, the detectives could see pretty much exactly what the boys described. The porch light, the TV through the front windows. And with like the light from the TV, they could actually see her dog being an excited pupper that like their human was home.
All right, well, color me wrong then, because that's the other possibility I should have mentioned, that they could 100% be telling the truth. So I'm used to everyone lying, that's where your mind immediately jumps.
I just assume everyone's guilty.
Exactly.
Which is why we can't use gut instincts at trial. Well, Matt and Paul, they both also took and passed polygraphs, which, I mean, to me, that's like shaking a magic 8-ball, but whatever.
Yeah.
So,
it's relevant to police, but it's not, the court doesn't care.
I don't even know why they still do, whatever. So, but they did take one and they passed them. So the detectives are really at a crossroads after chasing down as much information as possible, and they didn't really have anything solid. And honestly, by this point, the tips and calls had really stopped coming in, and Shannon's case just kind of went cold. But similar to my case last week with Mandy and the town of Acme, Washington, Shannon was never forgotten by anyone in the town. There just wasn't anything to look into.
Yeah, I mean, the same rules apply, though. If this is a small, tight-knit community, then more often than not, they're going to come together, because an event like this literally changes the fabric of your own town forever. And people are especially sad because everyone knows and loves your neighbor. So you never want to believe that a monster is hiding in your little bubble, your sanctuary, because it goes against everything you stand for.
Absolutely. It's like that must be so hard to realize it's someone you know, someone you pass at the grocery store, someone you maybe went to school with.
Yeah, you don't want to believe it.
Right. So, as one has to do, Bob keeps on pushing through each day, but he knew someone in town had to know something. So again, because he's a great dad, Bob rented out billboards with "Who Killed Shannon Siders" plastered all over them.
Good.
He knew he had to keep her name out there, and he wanted to make those that knew what happened uncomfortable. It was like a constant reminder to the killers that like Bob was not going to give up. Like this was not over. It was just kind of on pause.
I absolutely love that. And it's a very effective tool, whether it seems like it's producing results or not, because it keeps them looking over their shoulders. If they live in town, they're going to pass that billboard. They're going to see that this case is still alive and well.
I know. I love that idea. And like, hopefully the killer did have to drive past the billboards every damn day and think about what he or she did.
Yep.
And in the Cold Case Files episode, they showed photographs of like local businesses who had like those signs where you put the letters in and it said who killed, like several of them said "Who Killed Shannon Siders." So it wasn't just the billboards. It was like everybody's little sandwich board outside of their shop as well.
The community cared.
Yeah. So the billboard was up, but Shannon's case would remain cold. So now we're going to have to fast forward to 22 years after Shannon's
22
murder.
years?
22, yep.
Man.
So now it's August of 2011, and Newaygo had formed a cold case unit, and Shannon's case was like the first one at the top of their list to reopen.
I don't doubt that, and I sound like a broken record, but I will continue to say it louder for people in the back. This is why cold case units are so important, and every department should have one. And I'm not surprised that her case was at the top of their list, because I'm sure it was the most memorable thing that has ever happened in that town as far as a crime is concerned.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I didn't get as deep into like town history kind of as I did with Mandy's case, but remember how I told you, like, it was almost like everyone growing up had known this story.
Yes.
And like every officer that came into the department knew this story. So it kind of became like the case to work on.
Sure, you got a cold case to solve. It's got to be Shannon's.
Exactly. And these new detectives, they were ready to go because like Bob, they knew this was a solvable case. They knew that they were just missing like that one piece of information or evidence that had to be out there. So they decided to revisit the victimology and really get to know Shannon. So I don't think the original detectives did a bad job documenting everything, but they did miss two very important things that really could have helped back in 1989. So the first thing, after re-interviewing all of Shannon's family and closest friends, the detectives learned that Shannon always, and like, I mean always, wore her class ring on her right hand.
Wow.
It had her initials on it, and it had some sort of inscription. I don't know what it said.
It's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, well, the ring was not found on Shannon's body or among her possessions in her house. So the first thing the new detectives are thinking is like, we find the ring, we find the killer.
Yeah, that's a pretty big clue that was missed. And unfortunately, because 22 years have passed now, you kind of lost that opportunity to check with local pawn shops, things like that.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Well, detectives kept the info about the ring really guarded and close to the chest. They even actually went back out to where her body was found with a metal detector and just scoured the area just to make sure it hadn't been like pulled off during the attack. Yeah. And they did find like a ton of bullet casings from all the hunting over the years, but there was no sign of the ring. So the next steps the detectives took were to set up a Facebook page. And these guys were pretty smart in like how they did this. They didn't make this Facebook page look like it was officially connected to the police. It was just kind of a who killed Shannon Siders generic Facebook page.
Sure. Could have been anybody.
Right. And remember our 15-year-old police department receptionist, Amy?
Oh, Amy.
That we talked about? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that phone call that she had gotten with the prank call had really affected her, and it led her to having such a connection to Shannon's death. She was like an OG armchair detective.
That's amazing.
Yeah, she went hardcore. She pissed some people off, but she went hardcore, and like everyone in town knew she was like a dog with a bone and would talk to anyone and everyone about Shannon's case.
You cannot care about people's feelings when something like this. If you want answers, you don't stop fighting no matter who it pisses off.
Agreed. I will say she's in the cold case files and she's like, I got death threats, but I didn't care. Like, I needed to get to the bottom of this.
She's badass.
Well, when this Facebook page became active, most people in the town thought Amy was the one running it. And the detectives are like, we were fine to let them think that because they were hoping. And they even say this in the episode. They're like, people are so much more willing to talk online versus what they'd say to your face.
Absolutely. And this is just another way to let the killers know that Shannon has not been forgotten and their time is coming. Like, it makes the person who did this more likely to slip up. Like, maybe they move out of the area after this. Maybe they talk to someone because they're starting to feel the heat. You know, it does open up a lot of avenues.
It does. It really, like, I think that was a brilliant idea. So between the Facebook page and Amy's mission, some new buzz, some old rumors, and some tips worth checking out really started to roll in. For the sake of time and keeping our story straight, I want to go over one thing that you will see if you research this. One of the tips that came in was about this local family called the Hammond family.
Okay.
If you remember our Mayo, Michigan case, this is like the Duval family.
Oh, wow.
They
Reputation.
A pretty rough group of people, lots of history of abuse and violence. I saw in my research that there could have been incest, like just not a fun family. You don't have family game night with these people.
No.
Let's just say that.
The games
You're not
are very
playing
different.
categories. Exactly. So when the detectives heard this, they did take the lead seriously. And actually, Amy's the one who got told about this. And she let the cops know. So they did take it seriously, but when all was said and done, there was no way that these people were connected to Shannon's death. So just wanted to put it out there, but we can keep going.
Okay.
Another tip or rumor that got brought to attention was about all those letters that her friends had written to Shannon that Bob allowed to be put in her casket. The rumor was that there was a confession in one of those letters. So the detectives went to Bob about it, and he confirmed, he's like, I never opened or read any of the letters out of respect for Shannon. So he gave officers his blessing to have Shannon exhumed so the detectives could go through those letters.
That's a tough decision to have to make.
Yeah. Well, sadly, I don't want to say it was for nothing, but definitely turned out to be a rumor because there was absolutely no confession to be found. All of the letters were truly like love letters from her friends. But this exhumation did not happen in vain because it turns out there were some hair strands still in Shannon's hand.
How were they missed?
I have no idea. But I will say they were sent off for testing, and like detectives are pumped. They're like, okay, this is gonna tell us who did it. It was Shannon's own hair in her hand.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm still surprised they were there, that they wouldn't have been plucked and analyzed at the time. Like that they could do. Just because they didn't have DNA, they had ability to analyze hair.
Super weird.
Well, I can tell you for a fact that as a family member, signing an exhumation order is one of the most difficult things you will ever have to do. And this is going to come up in next week's case as well. Your loved one is at rest. They're in the ground. You have a place to go visit them. So to dig them up out of the ground, really think about that. But at the same time, you're so desperate for answers that if police tell you there's hope that doing this will solve the case, then you absolutely have to trust them. So I'm really glad that at least it led to some more clues, even if it wasn't the final answer.
Yeah, I'm very torn on it, I feel like, because part of me feels like it's just your body that's there. But I also don't know how I would feel if someone asked me to make that decision. So
Right.
So that happened. The detectives are kind of back at square one. So the cold case team's still working through re-interviewing everyone from the original 1989 case files. Now, this is one of the things that they didn't document so well. When they get to a woman named Julia Littich, she was one of Shannon's closest friends and neighbors. It turns out that somehow Julia's original interview didn't make it into the file. And had it been documented properly, I think things would have been a lot different back in 1989. So during Julia's interview, she provided like a whole new aspect to the timeline that the original detectives had been working with. It turns out that on that night, July 17th, 1989, Julia had to work until 10 p.m., but earlier in the day, she had made plans with Shannon to pop over when she got home from work. They were like neighbors, too. And I think Julia might have been trying to get Shannon hooked up with a job or something, but they were going to hang out. And Julia said she got home from work that night, and at about 11:45 p.m., she ran over to Shannon's and knocked on the door. And no one answered, so Julia's like, all right, I'll check back in a little bit. So she checks back in like half an hour or so. Still no answer. So she comes back. Like, she comes back multiple times. And actually, one of those times, she straight up went into the Shannon's house to see if, like, maybe she was in her room and was just, like, asleep or didn't hear her. Because it wasn't, like, Shannon to blow her off. And, like, they had set plans to do something.
Sure.
But Shannon wasn't there. And so Julia made one final attempt at 2:45 a.m. to go see if Shannon was there. And she was not. So Julia's like a little annoyed, but more worried about Shannon. But she figured, I guess I'll catch up with her in the morning when she finally gets home from whatever she's doing.
See, those brothers were lying. So either they never dropped her off, or I guess the other possibility is that they did drop her off and then she went somewhere afterward. But I knew that was suspicious.
Well, now detectives have a new account that pretty much blows up the original timeline they had been working with for the last 20 some odd years. So detectives end up talking with Lindsay Bradley, who was originally interviewed because she was a friend of Shannon's and she had dated Paul Jones, who again was one of those 18s hanging out that night with Shannon in the hole in the woods and one of the brothers that had supposedly given her the ride home. So it turns out that not long after Shannon went missing, Lindsay had been driving around with Paul and she noticed something odd sitting in the ashtray of his car. She confronted Paul and said, "You're asking me on a date when you have another girl's class ring right there?"
Oh, shit. Wow.
It was Shannon's ring. And Paul responded to her with, "Let's face it, she's probably dead."
Oh, man. How many times can we cue crows? That's like a big deal. And it seems like pretty relevant information. It just goes to show how any little statement or clue that gets missed can be the linchpin in solving this whole case. 22 years this lingered because of that one little missed piece of information back in the day. So sad.
Remember, that wasn't part of the original documentation. So in 1989, no one knew anything about the class ring. So, I mean, I kind of don't blame Lindsay for not saying anything about it, but now the detectives had heavy suspicion on the Jones brothers.
Yeah, with good reason.
Except that they didn't have any concrete evidence to move forward with. Well, let's welcome back to the chat our homegrown detective, Miss Amy Bonner. It turns out Amy had been talking with one of her good friends who randomly said to her, "Hey, I think you need to talk to Jenny Corrigan." And Amy was like, "Wait, what?" Like, she was shocked that her friend had kept the fact that Jenny might know something about Shannon from Amy for all these years.
Wow.
But Amy decides to go talk to Jenny. So in 1989, Jenny was another local teen, small town. Mm-hmm. And you might not be friends with everyone in these small towns, but all the kids knew each other in some capacity.
You know everyone, right?
Yeah. So on July 18th, the same night Shannon went missing, but like in the early morning hours, Jenny was out riding around with another local teen, Dean Robinson. And these two saw something, but they never came forward out of immense fear.
Wow.
So while Jenny and Dean were driving out in the woods, they ended up coming up to a parked car. And Dean, who was driving, pulled up and got out of the car just to like see who it was and maybe if they needed help or maybe they knew where a party was going to be, whatever. So Jenny stayed in the car, but she did hear the other drivers say the name Jones, and she heard them talking about how they were looking for a girl.
Wow, that's chilling.
Uh-huh. And it's like dark out, so it's hard to see who's talking to who.
Yeah, I get that.
So then Dean gets back in the car with Jenny, and he's like, let's get out of here. And they just start aimlessly driving around as teenagers tend to do in a small town with nothing better to do.
Yep.
But a little bit later, Dean and Jenny had to drive back through the area to like continue on home. And this time they saw Matt and Paul standing outside of their car, and there was a motionless female laying on the ground.
What?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of a big deal.
So Dean throws the car in park and bolts out of the car, wanting to see if he could help. Well, Dean ends up tripping over himself in like his excitement to get out of the car.
Yeah.
And as he's like falling to the ground, he said he recognized the motionless female as Shannon Siders.
Wow, and he didn't say anything at the time?
Well, hold on. Paul comes over to Dean and kicks him in the face where he had fallen down, basically threatening him like, you better not say anything. And meanwhile, and Jenny can see all this, meanwhile, Matt is walking towards Dean's car with what looked like a hammer in his hand.
Man.
So they were not just going to tell Dean to have a good night and be on his way.
Clearly. Wow.
But they didn't realize Jenny was in the car. So once they saw her in the passenger seat, he and Paul backed away and Dean and Jenny got the hell out of there.
Small town secrets, baby. So seriously, what would you do though? I mean, you live in this small town where everybody knows everyone, including their reputations. So you snitch on someone, it's not as easy to disappear into the woodwork. Like, I get the fear, but still, that is a humongous secret to keep for a lot of years.
I have a hard time because I feel like there's so many ways to anonymously tip people off. I don't know.
But if only one, if you saw
That's
that,
true.
Who else is it going to be?
Well, don't tell me about any secrets because I'll tell everyone. But
I told you so many secrets.
I know.
you
I'm going to put them on a billboard.
blood oath.
That's true. Just to give a recap of what the lead cold case detective, Pat Headland, and the team discovered to be the truth about that evening. Bob left for work at about 10:30 p.m. Shannon got together with those 8 other teens that night, but she's stuck in the car with that stupid Brandon guy, and Shannon's over it and wants to head home since she was planning on hanging out with Julia, which we find out all these years later. So Matt and Paul offered her a ride home. Shannon accepts, and this is when the investigators think that the brothers either convinced Shannon to go to another party, or they may have started driving just like into the woods, refusing to take her home.
All possibilities.
Right. So they also believe that then the brothers started making sexual advances towards her. And at some point, Shannon was able to get away from them, which is when Dean and Jenny drove up the first time and they said they were looking for someone.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, they must have found her because she must have been hiding in the woods. So they found her. They hunted her down. They ended up taking turns sexually assaulting her, and then they beat her to death, leaving her body in the woods.
My God, it's a literal, like, real-life slasher flick. A young girl running through the woods to escape her attacker. That's horrifying.
I know, isn't it?
God.
So the brothers are arrested, and Matt Jones ended up being convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
What?
And Paul Jones was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 30 to 75 years in prison.
Wow. I wonder how they pinned one with first-degree murder but not the other. Like, how they differentiated that Matt was the ringleader and possibly premeditated this whole thing. It feels like it should have been kind of a package deal because these guys were seen together. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know how they decided which one got a harsher sentence than the other.
They had to have some kind of evidence proving that, because that's a very big distinction.
Well, we're going to get into a little bit of the controversy, but let me finish some things up. So
Okay.
I have to add this because it's part of the case. In May of 2021, Dean Robinson, and he was the one who provided the key testimony
Mhm.
in the trial of Matt and Paul Jones, Dean recanted his testimony,
You're kidding me.
saying, quote, "I was lying under oath when I testified about any matter involving Matt or Paul Jones being involved in a homicide," end quote.
Really?
That's what the affidavit says, and it was conducted around like May 14th, 2021.
But when did they, it was 2000 and what, when his initial story came out?
2015, I think they finally told the story.
So this is six years later.
Mhm.
Huh. Okay.
He goes on to say, quote, "My testimony during the trial of the above captioned matter was given to me by law enforcement. Moreover, I was not injured by Matt or Paul at any point in my life," end quote. And then he continues in the document saying, quote, "Up until the point I testified during the trial, I had never met or seen Matt or Paul Jones."
It's so strange.
I know. He then goes on to say, quote, "Any of my testimony during the trial of the above captioned matter implicating Matt or Paul Jones in a homicide was false," end quote.
I wonder if they got to him and had him,
Don't know.
somebody, because if these guys are locked up, somebody got to him, because that's a pretty big thing to make up. And if he did make that up, then he should absolutely be charged with perjury, hindering an investigation, something.
Real quick, Dean had gotten himself into legal troubles and he was in prison on a 10-year sentence. I'm not sure 100% if he's still serving that sentence or not, but I don't think, and as far as we know, no one else, like Jenny or anyone else, recanted their statements.
Something happened, especially if he's in the jail system too. You wonder.
Yeah. And the Jones brothers have not been innocent this whole time. They got involved in other dumb shit and got put away for things. But that's part of this story that, like, you just don't know. Because right now, there's a private investigator named Bill Proctor, and he believes the Jones brothers are innocent. And he's trying to build a case to take to the Innocence Project to at least try to get these guys a new trial. But I was reading about it this morning, they are all out of appeals. So
there has to be new evidence. They would have to find something brand new to bring to the table.
What's wild, though, is, and I'm very generally believe the court. I'm like, yep, you did it. However, there's no physical evidence as far as we know. Like, even that story about the ring, we never found the ring. How do we know it was really her ring?
It's true.
Like, we don't have any evidence, like physical evidence. It's all very circumstantial, absolutely, but we don't have anything physical, really.
It's a wild story.
I know. It's so crazy. So, I mean, it is technically solved, but is it? I mean, if there really is someone else out there that committed this awful crime against Shannon, I hope it can be proven. But as it stands now, I kind of do think the cold case team got it right.
Yeah, you want to believe the right people are in jail, but when crimes like this happen, police really are under a lot of pressure to solve the case, to kind of make their community feel safe again, even after all those years. So I don't know, but like I said earlier, I think I would need to read the police report to see what evidence they really had against each of these guys, against Matt and Paul, to see why they were able to pin one with first-degree murder and one with second-degree. I think there's some fuzzy lines here that could use some clarification.
It's definitely a weird case, and it seems like everywhere you read, people are so torn. They're either like, no, they absolutely did it, and other people are like, they absolutely did not. So I wanted to present both sides since we're, they are technically convicted of it. So take with that what you will, I guess.
Yeah, and we can post a phone number for the, Newaygo, you said, police department, that if you guys have any information that proves this theory otherwise, that the wrong people are in jail, you absolutely call the police.
Yeah, let them know.
Wow. Crazy story.
Yeah, that is the case of Shannon Siders and how it stayed a secret for all those years. And is it still a secret? Who knows?
Yeah, and that's what this block is all about. And next week, we have an absolutely wild story about David Reed with insight that no one has ever seen or heard unless they were attached to this case.
Mhm.
And I'm going to tell you the version that was not seen on TV, not the watered down version that TV, paints certain pictures and presents information a certain way. You leave certain information out. And the other podcast that covered David's case simply regurgitated all the stuff that we did on the 2 shows that we produced about David. So
Mhm.
I have some things to say that you are not going to want to miss. I was fired up writing this. I just will say that.
Boy.
Yeah.
And we have some really amazing behind the scenes when we went to the crime scene and the area where all of this happened.
Absolutely.
So that is a big one you don't want to miss. That's next week. And then the following week, we have an interview with Rob Bentner, who ended up being the detective who solved that case.
Yes, he did. He's an amazing cold case detective. He's now a lawyer, but at the time he was a cold case detective with the Pennsylvania State Police, and he absolutely brought justice to David Reed. And we're going to get into all that and more in the next 2 weeks.
Something to look forward to. And then I think for September, we just picked our theme, so that's exciting. Get ready for that.
We did. We'll announce that later on. Maybe next week, maybe after Rob's interview. I think after Rob's interview. We'll save that.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Well, everyone, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, follow, do all the things. We are murderunscriptedpod@gmail.com. On socials, we are at murderunscripted. And you can go on our website at www.murderunscriptedpod.com. And also, thanks to one of our favorite listeners, the amazing Shannon Byers, we now have a subreddit. So you can look for that as well.
I don't even know what that means, but
I
Shannon
know
is
you don't.
awesome. And she helped us get started. Shannon was supposed to be our guest. She's actually going to be our September guest. So a little bit of a spoiler alert. But Shannon has been a humongous advocate of the show. She loves what we're doing. We love her to death because she's so supportive of us.
Mm-hmm.
And she actually reached out to see if she could help us get this started on Reddit. And I know nothing about Reddit. So I'm trusting that all of this is doing its thing on Reddit with all the subreddits and whatever other Reddits there are.
I kind of half get it, but she really gets it. So she's kicking ass and it's amazing. So everybody look it up.
She's on a volunteer basis on the team, like helping us out wherever she can. So we really appreciate that, Shannon.
Yes, we love her. But until next week, reminder to everyone, stay hydrated.
Oh, yeah. And go on Blue Sky.
Oh, yeah, and Blue Sky, too. Don't forget that one. I did post earlier this week, y'all, so check it out.
Man.
I don't know where it posted to.
Yeah. What is it? Bluesky.org.
Sure. Well, there's different channels on Blue Sky, and I don't know if you post to a channel or what. I don't get it. But until next week, be safe, stay hydrated, and remember, perverts don't wear signs that say they're perverts.
But if there's a missing girl in town and they have a missing girl's ring in their ashtray, chances are they're a pervert.
Most likely, yeah.
Wow. See ya.
Bye.